I have like a wet dream of if there's ever an invasion of America, I'm just gonna go to like people in Ocean City.
Oh my
like,
god.
the people I worked for. Like I'll just go and murder them and then fly back.
Okay.
I think that's what's going on so clearly here with a lot of people is that people have a lot of things that they view in their life that pisses them off, that angers them. They are angry at the world. They blame someone else for their problems. And this, like, they're kind of projecting their revenge fantasy onto the Hamas people. And that's kind of what's going on.
I think you nailed it. I'd kill everyone who wronged me, everyone who called me a name, that girl who said no to prom. Like, these guys are so cringe, man.
Right.
Which tell us, Hakim, you're the closest. Tell us, what the f is going on?
Very base things. This will be incredibly hard to do without getting bleeped or getting the stream taken down. So I'm gonna what's it called? Mind my words a little bit.
So to be clear, he just said this I think took place it was either the day after or the day after like Hamas invaded Israel. So that's what he's referring to when he says
incredibly based, right?
Yeah.
And there's nothing there's nothing based. Even if you are pro-Palestinian, even if you think Israel is a horrible, oppressive a state that is maintaining an open air prison and is an apartheid state, all that stuff, this doesn't help you. So just wrong on every account.
And what I downloaded this at 360p because I was afraid they would private it, which they did. But I should have downloaded the higher quality so you could see that I didn't see really any pushback in their chat, which is also concerning. So.
TLDR, basically a unexpected operation from a united front of sorts from Gaza that has launched itself into the neighboring areas, which of course the entire nation is Palestine, but for all intents and purposes right now, just to make it more simple, they've attacked certain settlements in what is termed now Israel. And they've made lots of headway. They've made an impressive amount of headway. They've also taken out a very interesting and surprising number of military commanders and leaders, particularly of Southern Command within Israel, which is interesting. The fact that they got one guy would have been impressive, but they got more than just one guy, so that's very good. But TLDR, to preempt all the questions, this has two major benefits. Number one, it's kind of to throw a wrench in the normalization process between Israel and Saudi Arabia, which is a very good thing. And number two is also to gain concessions in the forms of prisoner swaps, because there's a lot of people who are imprisoned illegally by the Zionist forces, and all these people that.
I just want to pause. Sorry. So two horrible things there.
Lots of horrible things.
Yeah, lots of horrible things. Lots of horrible things. But two things that sort of stood out to me was describing a peace or de-escalation between Saudi Arabia and Israel as a negative bad thing, right? Whatever you want to say about peace in the Middle East, surely having one of the most important regional and global players de-escalate with Israel, it has to be seen as a positive light, even if you don't agree with the monarchy in Saudi Arabia, even if you don't agree with MBS and all that stuff. So that's interesting. So they're in support of the Iranian goal of destabilizing any agreement with Israel, which they view as illegitimate, even between Arabs and Israelis. And then the second part is pretending they care about illegal detention. Who can believe that what they're concerned about is the lack of due process in detention and imprisonment, and the fact that it's illegal? It's illegal to murder people. And so to pretend that what you care about is process, what you care about is the law, that is not at all your concern. And it's just like the height, I think, of hypocrisy to, I don't know, to highlight the illegality or the arbitrariness of the detention as an issue when really you have no interest in that.
Who was that voice that was speaking? I'm not familiar with these guys.
I think his name's Hakim. I think he's visualized by the red Stalin, not Stalin, whoever the fuck that is, Lenin, whoever the fuck that commie is.
He's like a part of this regular podcast, or he's
Yes.
just like a guest or
He's
something?
a part of this
Okay.
regular podcast. I believe I could be wrong, but I believe he helps write scripts for Second Thought.
Okay.
Works with
So, I
them
mean, this
closely.
sounds like your standard dipshits conversation. Yeah.
I mean, does it? I don't remember
Second
hearing
Thought has
anyone
a huge
saying
channel
this.
and a huge following.
Hakeem has a
No, this
large
is
channel.
idiotic.
Yeah, Hakeem
Like,
has a
there's
very
not going to
large
be
channel,
anywhere
too.
to swap prisoners too soon in Gaza. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
what they did is incredibly harmful to the Palestinian people. And yeah, I mean, these are just like, what is he talking about? This is Palestinian land. Like, what are you talking about, dude?
And would you trade? I mean, you should ask them. Even if it's you think Israel's illegitimate, all that stuff, would you trade those prisoners for the maybe tens of thousands of lives that are going to be ended in Gaza right now?
Mm-hmm.
There's no deal to be made.
Yeah,
right.
Israel traded 1,000 people, 1,000 prisoners for one soldier that was kept for 5 years. What could they even offer for 150 people? Like, there's just nothing they can even trade. Those people are goners.
But even if there were something to trade, even if there was a willingness to trade, all that stuff, you're going to lose more people in their response, and they know that there's going to be a violent response,
right.
And they know there's going to be thousands lost. And so to pretend that this is a trade-off that matters, you care more about those people, the 4,000 or 5,000, whatever it is, prisoners in Israel than the maybe tens of thousands of civilians in Gaza who are going to die.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. My thought is, and I mean, I don't know what the fuck Hamas is thinking, but my thought is that essentially the Israeli government would probably, and as much as a tragedy as it is, would probably just write off that none of those hostages, there's no chance that they're ever going to get back.
I don't see how, including Americans.
Yeah, I don't see how anyone's going to get back from that they're all just going to be lost. And I mean, if Hamas honestly didn't expect that, they're just retarded. So,
well, and Hamas is going to execute these people on live TV too.
Yeah,
wait till that happens.
Right. They said they're going to start doing that. So I guess we'll see. Hakeem has 237 subs on YouTube. So
Second Thought has 1.64 million.
Yes, he does.
I love that they're giggling about all this too. Like,
isn't it? Yeah, disgusting.
Disgusting people, man.
Yep.
The armed groups within Palestine have managed to capture. These people will be eventually sent back to Israel in return for freeing at least some number.
And just to give you a perspective on how valuable a single prisoner is, the last time there was a prisoner exchange, they exchanged one Israeli prisoner for like 1,027 Palestinian prisoners, I believe, something like that. Mm. So if you've got now, 50 to bargain with, that's huge. That's huge.
Yeah.
That is disgusting.
Isn't it?
Including Americans. Are any of these guys American?
Yes.
Second Thought is American. The other ones are not.
Second Thought was the one just speaking, by the way.
Yeah.
That is
insane, dude. To wish
it's totally insane.
This misery on your own fellow Americans, that's insane to me.
There was a weird, did you see, there's some weird tweets today that were like people who are American who are like, would you make the same, there are people who are supporting Hamas, say, would you make the same argument if like Native Americans like rose up and started like killing people in America? Would you just accept your fate? And there were some tweets that people were saying, yeah, like I just hide and have to hand it to them. And I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? They're just saying they let themselves and their families get killed by Native Americans. Like, it's just insane to me.
Yeah, that's just internet nonsense.
Yeah.
Look, this is crazy that they're referring to the hostages as like bargaining chips.
Well, it's weird.
Especially after what we've just seen.
I know. Well, and this will come up later. And they seem to be operating under this delusion. They honestly think that Hamas will treat the prisoners well.
Oh my God.
And will send them back. They honestly think this. They talk about this later. It's kind of bizarre. But
yeah, exactly right. A lot of people do, and there's already a lot of people just mentioning, like, for example, but the retaliation from Israel is going to be harsh. It's like, yeah, but it's always been like that, even when the Palestinians weren't in an active armed rebellion or uprising or what have you.
When they're doing everything the liberals ask them to do, when they're being polite and docile, and, protesting quote unquote the right way, they're still getting murked, right? So what is the
exactly right?
It's like Fidel.
So what's the point? You're still
So then that's just a failure to appreciate scale here. So because at least one or two or a dozen or even 100 or 200 or 500 people are wrongfully killed by Israel, then we have no sensitivity to the scale of harm and destruction that's going to be caused by the retaliation. As long as you meet a threshold of pain caused by Israel, call that some level of unspecified level of unjustified killings by Israel, assuming they're unjustified, I no longer have any sensitivity or gauge to the scale. That is totally bizarre. You should, of course, always be concerned about the magnitude of suffering inflicted upon the Palestinian people. Surely 200 unjustified killings by Israelis against Palestinians, that must be better than 15,000 dead in Gaza, which is, does that seem improbable to y'all that 15,000 people die in Gaza?
No, they've already killed. They've already killed like 700 and they haven't even walked in yet.
Yeah. I mean, it is weird because they never lay out, beyond what they did. They never lay out what they think good, like how is Gaza going to benefit from this action? They never actually lay that out, except to say that he says later that this shows that these Western countries are really paper tigers. So I don't know if they're just looking at this as like a sacrifice in the steps of revolution against first, like Western democracies or something, which is pretty disgusting if that's how they're viewing this. But
in order to think that, in order to think that this is good, you either think that the signal by itself is good, or that it will eventually produce good results for your side.
Right.
And I don't think that there's a thinking or sane person. Maybe you can make the argument, but I haven't heard it artfully or convincingly done that eventually the Palestinians will be better off because, or more better off than they would have absent this terrorist attack.
Yeah, I mean, I see no reality where Israel is going to not exist.
You can't make that argument. Like,
on every level too. Yeah. America is going to be much less inclined to stop funding Israel because of this action. You have AOC coming out and condemning the DSA, or at least members within the DSA, for their protests and for things that they said. Aligning with a pro-Israel sentiment. And so immediately the West's response is going to be more pro-Israel. And do you think the Israelis are going to give up on their state or give up on their projects or their settlements as a result of this? Maybe Netanyahu gets, thrown out because of the intelligence failure. But do you really think that anyone
not going anywhere? Are you kidding me? Look, he's going to be more popular than ever.
Well, regardless of whether, then it does nothing. Then it really does nothing in terms of even internal Israeli politics. I happen to think internal Israeli politics will at least be affected by this, but not necessarily or even likely in the direction they want.
Yeah, not in the way they would want. No, not at all.
Well, this is an existential threat for Israel right now. I don't think people realize the severity of how Israelis view this. This is life or death to them. So it's over. Gaza is done. Like, they're going to take over that whole fucking place. It's crazy. Like, I don't think these lefties realize what's about to happen. Israel's not fucking around.
Look, I don't disagree. I think that's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean,
and Israel's going to dare Hezbollah to get into it. Say, you want some of this smoke too? And they're going to look at Iran and say, you want to get fucked up too?
Yeah, it's like this whole reaction. I mean, I guess they're just so gleeful for the revolution that they're deluding themselves. Because even if you're in favor of all this stuff, I mean,
it won't happen.
It's not going to happen because my initial reaction when I started to see all this was exactly what you were saying, Ira, where I was like, okay, this is such a threat to Israel that they're just going to go in and take control of the region, and that's it.
Yes, they are. Deadliest day in Israel's history.
Yeah. Well, it's just and it's just the idea of you're going to have people go in and just start murdering random people. Random civilians, you're going to start kidnapping them, raping them, like just do this like kind of like barbarian shit that most people thought we were beyond. That's going to hit people so differently than shooting rockets at you or anything else. It's just going to hits everyone so different.
We cannot accept that. It's like living next door to ISIS. We cannot accept living in a world where that exists. And sadly, the Palestinians are the real victims because they're just human shields for Hamas.
Right.
People talk about the two-state solution. You think the two-state solution is off the table?
No, I think it actually is more on the table after they clear out Hamas and do what they got to do. It's going to be months and months away. But I actually think that this might be a way for the people of Palestine to get freed of this monster.
But it's going to hurt, and it's not necessary. And just because I support a two-state solution, I think that has been the consensus view of everyone who, in my opinion, with a serious opinion on the matter, has been the two-state solution. I totally support it. I think the Palestinians absolutely should be liberated from the current status of what they have. And this may bring about a two-state solution eventually, but it wasn't necessary, and it's going to be way more painful than it needed to be.
Do you think the two-state solution is going to include the West Bank, or is it, Gaza, or is it just going to be West Bank and Israel?
No, I think West Bank, Gaza, it's the only way. Israel doesn't want Gaza. I know people out there may think that, but they don't want Gaza. They don't want to deal with this problem. Nobody does. The Arab world doesn't, and that's the real sad thing, is these people are just completely screwed. But Israel doesn't want to occupy them. They don't want the problem. And also, Israel is 25% Arabs. People don't realize that. I think it's all Jewish people lighting the menorah and stuff. Like, there's 25% of Israel is Arabs as well, and that's growing too. And they're even coming into power. Like, Bibi had a coalition government 2 governments ago, where he had the Arab Party kind of involved. So, like, it's not what people think it is.
We didn't choose this path.
You still have, they still have their water's cut off, electricity's cut off. They can't get they're blockaded by air, sea, and land. All the checkpoints in and out of Gaza are controlled by the Zionist occupation forces. And they indiscriminately arrest and kill and do even far worse to people as young as like fucking 6 years old, and sometimes even younger. Right, you gotta love the fucking Guardian reporting. It's like, oh yeah, Palestinians get how
received
the fuck do they
bullet
word it?
wounds to the ankles.
Yeah, received bullet wounds to the ankles. Like, oh yeah, no, because that's just what happens.
Yeah.
So they basically they've accepted this idea in their head, this framing that Israel just evil. Their soldiers are just running around killing, kidnapping, raping Palestinians for no reason. Therefore, I guess everything is justified at that point. So they're kind of looking at like. Yeah, like I'm assuming they're looking at like what Hamas did to Israel, Israel does to the Palestinians like every day. That's probably what they're operating from.
Which is and as someone who's, I'm not an expert on internal Israeli politics, but there is I know that there's a lot of opposition to a lot of those policies and incidents. Yeah. And to like even now, most recently, you've seen the level of opposition. I think that if anything, it shows that Israelis are committed, or at least some segment, some not insignificant percentage of the population is committed to having checks on arbitrary power. So I, again, don't think that what has occurred is going to improve those incidents, right? It's going to make people more on edge, more willing to shoot, more willing to detain arbitrarily, more checks, not less.
Yeah. I mean, that's why this whole thing is so stupid to me, because it's like, when I say like, oh, Israel has all the power here, I'm like, well, what if Hamas, didn't shoot missiles at Israel? What if they weren't spending so many time and resources and money and energy getting weapons and shooting missiles at Israel, instead saying like, okay, let's try to build infrastructure here and, actually work with the Israeli government so that they like become lax on security, lax on the checkpoints, so we can actually have a functioning country. Like, to me, that shows you actually care.
That's
you're building trust.
Yeah.
I agree. Their main mission is to destroy Israel, Hamas. They do not want Israel to live. And so they're more focused on that than anything else.
To be clear, from what I'm gathering, and I haven't listened to the whole thing, that seems to be these guys' intention as well. They don't in favor a two-state solution. They favor a one-state solution.
No, they're calling it Palestine.
Yeah,
Israel.
Israel is illegitimate because they have an interpretation of how the Balfour Declaration and World War I and this and that and illegitimate borders, all that stuff. And again, you just point to any example in how far are we going to take this back? Rewind the clock. The Israeli claim in terms of lineage goes back, some might argue, even further than depending on how you look at it. If you want to really play this game, you can play the game. And there's absolutely a historical basis to think that Jewish people existed in this region for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been swayed by the historical, as a Jew, no. I've never been swayed by the historical argument, but I mean, I'm more swayed by, was it like a third of the population was Jewish at the time? There was a deal that was offered. My understanding, the Jewish population was in favor of it. The Arab population was not. They fought it in a war and then lost. And then, all the consequences came after that. So.
Yeah, it was shitty what happened to the people that were there, for sure. It was real shitty. But Jewish people have been treated like shit all over the world for a long time, and nobody wanted them. And the world decided this is where you're going to go. And so that's where they went. And it sucks, but you can't take it back. And it's never going to change.
Right.
And the British did lie 100%. They promised certain things to certain groups. Now you can make
pulled a
arguments
McCarthy.
about
they two-faced it.
What homeland means versus the promises made to the guy from Mecca, the Sharif of Mecca, and at the time of the
British promised both the Jews and non-Jews alike that they would get the land.
Yeah, inconsistent promises, no doubt, but par for the course for the British Empire at the time and before. There's a lot of tragedy and a lot of injustice in history, and you got to make the most of it going forward and make the world better for people who are living it today, and to pretend that we should rewind the clock and send 9 million people where do you want to put them?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I agree 100%. There comes a time where, I mean, this comes up in American politics too. There comes a time where it's like, okay, like the past was super fucked, but you have to create policies going forward to the future. You can't be motivated by revenge, because that's never going to bring you in a positive place. So,
but yeah,
there was another one that was, I think, today or last night that was was it New York Times? I forget. It was a masterful use of passive voice. It's like X amount of Israelis killed, X amount of Palestinians were injured or something like that. It's like okay, only one side is
dead.
Okay,
they said Palestinians are dead, but Israelis are killed.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
how it is.
Yep.
Hey guys, I can't come into work today. Oh, why? Oh, I have a severe case of bombs falling on my head.
Yeah.
But yeah. The biggest gain from this is to realize that a essentially completely cut off and sanctioned group of people who are residing in what could be only termed an open air prison camp, where they can't, nothing can come in, and it's very difficult for things to even go out. These people have managed to not only stage a proper military operation, but completely catch a country with arguably the highest level of surveillance technology and use of said surveillance technology in blatant disregard and violation of all sorts of conceptions of human rights. They managed to catch this evil entity by complete surprise. This shows that, again...
so we care about human rights as relates surveillance. We care about human rights as relates surveillance. We care about human rights as relates arbitrary detention. By the way, I'd be curious about these people's opinions on the Uyghur Muslims in China and what they think about arbitrary detention in those situations and surveillance in those situations. But of course, human rights with respect to living and not being killed by terrorism, that's a legitimate military operation. What did he say? A proper military operation?
Proper. Yeah. Well, you heard it. I mean, Israel's evil, so
yeah,
it's okay. That. I mean, it's just despicable and disgusting to me that these people are cheering on this idea that, like, as you said, proper. It was a proper military action. Really, like to just go in and start murdering and raping civilians is a proper military action in their minds, and to hold this up as something to commend is just so insane and despicable.
Yeah, to a giant audience.
Yeah.
Well, what do you do about it though? Like there's just these sick people on the internet casting this bullshit. I appreciate you guys using your platform to spread the word. I know Destiny's been pushing back on this nonsense too.
What's what you have
I don't
to
know.
do? This, because the thing that bothers me is that, I mean, obviously not every socialist is this far gone. I mean, most of them are saying shit that I vehemently disagree with on the subject matter. This is like the most despicable. And it's annoying because I know, like, Second Thought, he's got 1 million subs. He's a giant channel. He's putting all this stuff out there. He calls it propaganda himself. Hassan's a big fan of his. Like, people need to understand that there is this insane shit going on in the far left. And if you don't call it out, it's just going to consume and consume and consume. There was Chris Rufo had an interesting talk on Twitter where it was Local Distance was debating, I forget, some other people. And it was this idea of like, should the right adopt the stance of no enemies to the right? And, Wokel had a very good point about how like, well, this stance of no enemies to like, quote, your side, that's what allows the extremists to just take over. And I think that is so true. If you just keep your head down and you allow the crazy people to be crazy, then it's just going to slowly consume the party. And I am glad to see that like this, we've reached the point where people are like on the left are like, this is a step too far. These people are psychotic. And I hope this is an eye-opening experience for people to just throw these people and say, we're not associated with you. You're not on the left. You're just fucking psychos. Just get out of here.
In the category of left, I totally endorse what you just said, Sitch. But I also think that there's additional wrinkle here, which is I'm not on the same side as these people.
Yeah. Of course. I assume you're liberal, aren't you? Not you still believe in capitalism?
Yeah. In that sense, I would consider myself left wing, right. Not left wing like this,
not leftist.
We're not on the same side, right? Getting everything I want in the universe and having all the power to decide how the world is a very different vision than theirs. And I don't even think I'm more on the side in this sense with a lot of people. I would say even people on the right. In my vision of, I don't know, human rights, than I am with these people. Whatever side they're occupying, the tanky side, the dirtbag left, whatever you want to call it, that's not my side.
Yeah, I worry about labeling these guys even left. I don't know what their views are. I don't know if they consider themselves socialists or something. But this is nothing to do with them being on the left. This is just
they are socialist,
delusional. But this has, I would argue, this has nothing to do with their political beliefs, unless I'm missing it. This is just delusional.
They have this idea of like oppressor, oppressee, revolution, like all these evil liberal democracies basically keeping the revolution Marxist energy in check. And so that's kind of the lens at which they're viewing this through. And to be clear, I'm not saying like the only reason these people, first, they identify themselves as leftists. They would look at you, IRI, and say you're like not on the left.
Liberal.
They'd say you're some kind of right-wing.
And you even heard him. You even heard him insulting liberals in this.
But the reason I think this is important is because my perception on this is that in America, the only reason these tanky, dipshit, leftist, dirtbag left, whatever you want to call them, like are able to grow audiences is because there's a lot of normies on the left who don't realize what they are. And that needs to be drawn attention. It's kind of like when there were a lot of people on the right who were ethno-nationalists, but kind of hiding their power level. And then it kind of very slowly started to peak out over the years.
And also sometimes they're charismatic too. Sometimes, I'm not saying these people are charismatic, but there are some people on the dirtbag left who are funny, genuinely funny or charismatic. And there are people in the Trump wing who are funny.
Nick Fuentes is very funny. I mean, but he's also like a really bad person.
So I can understand why people can see these creators and like and enjoy them because they can be charismatic.
I just worry that calling these guys left bleeds over to people like Pisco and I, and then gets people to be angry at us, right? And it's like, no, but I'm just saying,
what are we supposed to call them? Right wingers?
No, they're nut jobs. It'd be like us calling Nazis right wingers. Like I don't think right wingers, like Nazis, are any more right wingers than these guys are on the left. These guys are insane.
I mean, a lot of people call right wingers Nazis, literal Nazis,
right?
That's the alt-right. I disagree. Obviously, I 100% disagree. Like I wouldn't say that.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying, Myra. I think. What are you gonna say?
Well, again, my point is, I worry that this starts making people hate people like Pisco and I, thinking that we're associated with something like that.
Right. And I understand that, and I think that intuition, unfortunately, leads or can lead a lot of people to downplay or not want to talk about like the bad actors on their side because they don't want to be associated with. It's understandable, but I think it has the counter effect, which is it gives the other side ammunition to say they don't really care about these crazy racists because they're not calling out the racists on their side. It's all political. And also it allows these people like that we're listening to right now, it allows them to sort of sneak their way into like the left on your side and kind of slowly poach people over to their side.
Although it's an easy
guess,
layup for us, and I don't think we get much credit from the right for calling us out. To be honest with you, you know, I don't.
Yeah, I have no problem calling.
I don't
them
know if you
out.
get credit, but I think it helps the conversation.
Yeah, maybe.
Like,
Yeah,
I don't even. This might sound stupid, but I don't even think these guys are like real socialists. I mean, they're just like I said, internet edgelords who are ignorant on the history and what's possible, and they probably never even spoken to anyone in Palestine before, have no idea what's going on there. It's all based on Twitter videos. You know, they're Scott Adamsing it right now.
I think one of the guys, I don't know which one. I think one of them, I want to say, is Iranian or from a Middle Eastern country. So they're closer to it than Second Thought, who's American. Now, Second Thought, he's one of these, you know, he says he's a communist, and yet he has a secondary channel where he drives luxury cars. So he's like a communist the way Hassan's a communist, but, you know, they still have effect on the environment, whether they are actually living their, you know, ideals or not.
Do you realize
persuading people?
Do you realize that one of the reasons why we're perceived as right wing, even though we're not really right wing, is because we call these people out?
Well, I think it's because you call them out and you like lean on they're on the left. They're on the left instead of they're extremists, and these people are insane.
Although
it's
in
like
fairness,
I feel like there's an emphasis on it.
In fairness, I have not really seen, you know, usually when this horseshoe thing, you would typically see like Trumpist and dirtbag left. I think it's a tanky authoritarian left issue. I don't really see the MAGA crowd on the same degree here.
Well, so yeah, I think the guy who's talking, I'm being told, is a doctor from either Iran or Iraq or something. But regarding what you just said, yeah, I mean, I think people on the right, people on the right are more morally, intuitively tuned to be afraid of barbarians crossing the border to rape and kill. So they're going to look at that and they're not going to support it. Like most people, even the people that are maybe anti-Semitic are going to look at that and be like, wow, that's kind of like fucked up, because it's going to like trigger that emotion, which I think a lot of people on the left don't really have that fear, that emotion. So maybe it's not going to hit that specific way. Number one. Number two, regarding kind of like what you were saying, I mean, when we do this stuff, I try to make very clear that we have a differentiation between leftists who are socialists and liberals who believe in, you know, capitalism and liberalism and are moderate Democrats. And, you know, part of my position and goal is, in my statement I've said a lot, is that I think the only reason this sort of tanky leftist socialist crap even exists, which or wokeness even exists, is because a lot of normie liberals just don't understand that these people have, you know, a worldview that's not their own, that they're not like classically on the left the way that you would consider yourself, or that most people in America would consider themselves.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we're most worried about.
Yeah,
like we're worried about these ideas
that.
being hidden from normie liberals.
Yeah, because
I just worry that the audience may not hear that nuance that you're implementing, Sitch. And I have nothing to base that on. It's just my general, what I take away when I hear people criticize these guys is it's the left, and it's might as well be Joe Biden out there with a Palestinian flag, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I understand there's always gonna be people in the audience that, I mean, we get in the fights with people in the audience who try to say, you know, who are saying that's saying it is just the left broadly. But, you know.
No, I hear you. I hate these people. I wish I could talk to them in person and have a nice, pleasant conversation.
Okay.
Israel, like all or other settler colonial nations, are paper tigers. These are not invincible. They're not. They're made of flesh and blood. And if it, you know, they can be taken down.
And just look. I mean, look. This is day 2, and it's like 1 million settlers. People are saying are trying to leave. That is not how a people who live
exactly right.
That's like not their home. If they're bouncing, if they're going to Cincinnati with their bags already packed and stuff to their second home, like that's not their homeland. Why aren't they staying and defending this place that is, you know, their ancestral home? If it's, you know.
So Second Thought has this insane idea that if people in the area are fleeing their homes, that means it's not really their homes. They have a second home in the United States of America.
He's basically saying that they're rich. That's exactly what he's saying.
They're snowbirds, only they go to Israel in the winter, I guess.
This is like totally disgusting, Sitch.
Also, a lot of Israelis are going to Israel. There are a lot of people who are returning there.
Yes. Yeah.
And just because they move out of, they moved in a different part of the country to avoid people who are executing, doesn't, just like it would be senseless to say that if someone from Gaza is trying to avoid the bombing
Right.
that's occurring, that they somehow have a less of a tie to the land.
Yeah.
Their claim to the land or their attachment to the land, surely that's been evidenced enough by their willingness to fight it in separate wars for the past over almost a century, right? And so
Right.
I just don't see, like, it's not a very authentic or genuine argument. If you really thought they didn't have an attachment to land, why are they fighting so hard over the course of decades to maintain it and expand it? And so,
look, it's just insane. These people are running for their lives. They're terrorists in the street, like beheading people. Like to cast that as, oh, you're just abandoning your property. It's weird. It's totally weird.
Yeah. True.
It's just it kind of just, the facade slips a little bit when in events.
By the way, the live, the amount of people watching this is the first time we've had such an amount. No, we're up to like 1,450 or something.
Hey, nice. Howdy, everybody. I think that's our highest yet.
I hate all of you motherfuckers.
Hey,
that kind of makes me feel better.
It's Hassan.
You get a kiss from me.
in chat.
No.
Oh, that kind of makes me feel better. Their viewership this is the highest it's ever been. So it's not exactly resonating with tens of thousands of people,
Right.
I mean, you can look at it the other way, though. That's scary that their viewership is climbing when they're saying all of this incendiary stuff.
We hate watchers, though.
Oh, maybe.
That's why.
I see.
Yeah,
so wait, but I want to say, because if anyone says, "Oh, you're being dishonest," so this is edited. This is like a 2-hour stream, and I just took clips out of it and put them together. So I don't know the exact time code. Yeah, I don't know the exact time code to what they said and then when Hassan showed up. It wasn't like super long after. So,
and also I don't necessarily read into anything of just being in a chat. People are in chats with
right.
They disagree with.
I'm assuming Hassan would not agree with these statements, but I think you could definitely call him out and saying it's irresponsible after he sees this, someone brings his attention, for him to support this channel or any of these people after this.
I think that's a fair statement.
I mean, does he have a responsibility to say something publicly, though? Like, is he responsible because he was in their chat for everything that's said on their stream? I feel like people would use that argument.
I think Sitch is saying if you continue to support
after this.
After it.
Yeah.
Which is fair for me.
Maybe there's other reasons why. Maybe Pisco one day you do a Nazi salute on stream, and I'm like, well, I don't support that about Pisco, but this guy's
there's
really popping off.
Wow. You have a lot of loyalty to Pisco. I'm impressed.
Are you really saying Pisco can do the Roman salute, and you're still going to support him?
Support him. There's stuff I could do. I agree on certain. There's a Pisco, bound of things.
If you do that, look, we're no longer friends. Okay. I'm being straight.
I'm joking.
Being straight with you here. Like,
I'm joking.
Don't do
it's
that
an extreme
shit.
example. I'm just saying, like, there can be.
This is an extreme.
Compartmentalize.
Look, how extreme is this example?
What?
Jeez.
Because a couple of guys who are gloating over something like sophomores in high school they know nothing about. Like, I don't know.
But here's what
doesn't the second thought guy do like a bunch of socialist videos?
He does.
It's about
yeah.
But
all right, let me give you an example that I thought was helpful for me. There are people who genuinely think a ceasefire is the best strategy right now. That is, there are people who say that even though I'd condemn the attacks by Hamas, I think that we should not support an incursion by Israel, and there should be a ceasefire. That's a position where even if I don't necessarily agree with it, I can understand it, and I think that that's one thing. And that's one where I'm not going to cut off ties with someone who says I would like a ceasefire. But am I going to want to associate in a collaborative mode with someone who says that it was justified, that it was a proper military strategy?
Hell no.
Well, look, I'm just trying to put myself in the shoes of a Hassan Piker, and there's who knows, maybe this guy has worked with him for years. You're not so quick to abandon somebody. You hear one thing that maybe they pushed it a little far, but is it Hassan's place to come out and publicly have to say something like that? in order to keep associating with them. I don't know. I'm obviously I'm not happy with it, but I just wonder, like, are we expecting to?
Horrendous. I would personally feel compelled to say that this is despicable, but at the very minimum, I would not associate with them at all anymore. And I think to me, that's completely reasonable.
I think it's reasonable. I mean, if Destiny did that, I don't think you or I would like if he like stood by those statements. I don't think we would associate with him.
Yeah, I guess my bar is so low for expectations of these idiots that I just it's business as usual. It's just another day. This is the guy who said America deserved 9/11 or whatever.
Right.
It's like people moved on and everybody associates with him still. So it's
hold him to a higher standard. Call him out.
Look, but I feel like
you didn't even like us just tacitly calling the Democrats stupid here.
Well, and Sitch said evil, and everything's on the table.
This literally is evil. What these people are saying is fucking evil.
Here's the difference. Maybe it's because I'm a little older, and I'm not saying this condescendingly, but like this is just sounds like a bunch of shitheads who are immature. And
one of them's a doctor.
Okay,
I don't know how old they are.
I don't know. It just sounds like a bunch of immature edgelords to me.
Okay.
Maybe I'm being too, not giving it enough seriousness and enough. But I feel like you could fight these ghosts all day long, and there's just another one's going to pop up with the same thing, and so it's like, what's the best strategy? Like how? I don't know. Maybe you guys feel you could smash.
What did you think of like the
rhetorically?
What did you think of the pro-Palestine demonstrations in like New York and stuff like that?
I was disgusted, but I've been to Israel parades before, like on Israel Day, and I've seen the protesters, and you don't engage with sick people, like the counter protesters there saying Israel's murderers and stuff, and you don't engage with sick people. I think a lot of these people are sick in the head.
I don't necessarily have a problem with people supporting Palestine and even demonstrating about it, but what I want it to be coupled with is a clear condemnation of violence of what occurred. And so people will assume
gas of Jews at some of these protests.
So given the omission of condemnations of that violence at a lot of these protests, and given the inclusion in a lot of these protests of explicitly supportive statements, I don't agree with most of these protests.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't either. I was glad to see AOC speak up. I think DSA showed its true colors and probably cost themselves membership, like you guys were saying. I think this hurts the socialist cause on the left. So I think this hurts those far left people way more than it helps them. So they can keep running their mouths all they want. I think it just hurts them more and more. Maybe that's how I see it.
Well, I mean, I agree, but I also think it does hurt the left broadly and liberals broadly if, there's been a lot of talk about whenever there's neo-Nazis or whomever, protesting, there's like a big focus on that. And if there's no focus on like people saying gas the Jews in a protest just because they're not neo-Nazis, that's like, well, what the fuck's going on here? Like, is it, why is suddenly we ignoring this contingent of anti-Semitism?
I understand that. I understand that point. I just saying, I used to go to protests a lot before I started streaming for like a year and a half. I went every weekend in LA, and there were always some dipshits who did stupid things that didn't represent me or everybody there. And you never hear about that. Or you hear about it. You never hear about the 98% of people there that are there for the right reason. So
sure.
I'm a little skeptical when I see like somebody holding up a phone with a swastika, and it's like, look, they're all Nazis. Like, okay.
Okay.
In events.
By the way, the live, the amount of people watching this is the first time we've had such an amount. No, we're up to like 1,450 or something.
Hey, nice. Howdy, everybody. I think that's our highest yet.
I hate all of you motherfuckers.
Hey, look,
it's okay.
It's Hassan.
You get a kiss from
Hassan's
me.
in chat.
No.
That's why.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Hey, Hassan.
All right. Hey, what up?
Hey, partner.
Right, that makes sense. Hakeem, what are your thoughts on countries in the Arab world recognizing Israel? I don't want to be bleeped, nor do I want to end up in a gulag of sorts, so I will not comment. But I hope that's enough. Go refer to my Gorbachev rant.
Yeah,
it'll come out. You can kind of get that vibe. Not very positive, I'll say that much. By the way, all the populations are never okay with normalizing relations. Or very rarely, like exceedingly rarely, do you meet somebody who's even like halfway into the idea of normalizing with the settler colonial military occupation.
Okay, so we had two. His claim about whether anyone should acknowledge Israel is so spicy. He can't say it on YouTube. Number one, and then number two, he's saying all the people that he's interacted with in the Middle East are all against acknowledging Israel. So it's not none of this is really positive, really. So.
Yeah, but also like he's condemning Arab states that recognize Israel,
Yeah.
which is not inconsistent with things he said, but it is in a sense sort of disrespecting the decisions made by those states, because you think it doesn't truly represent the will of the people there is what I'm sort of getting at. That said, how can you say that, right? And look at the Islamic Republic and say and be okay with the kind of cynicism on display by Iran. You know, this is a country that doesn't really, it's not an ideological struggle for Iran. It's they're doing it purely because of regional interests and to scuttle the potential relationship that's formed with the Muslim countries that are not aligned with it. So like, I don't know. I think the kind of cynicism, if you want to call it that, on the part of Arab states that are normalizing with Israel is also true of Iran and their overtures to Hamas. I think that that's a purely spoiler relationship and one in which Iran is trying to cause chaos.
I mean, I think they do look at it from a ideological perspective, because as he was saying, like, they're viewing Israel through the lens of being a settler colonial, colony by the West. And so,
oh yes, they're ideological, but I just mean Iran. I don't think Iran is
right, but
cynical.
But I would wager if you asked him that, he would be naive enough to believe that the Iranian ruling class has that same view that he has,
namely
or
that
some flavor of it.
Okay, yeah, I just think that's real convenient. And
of course, it's convenient. Yeah,
yeah. So Iran is the one true vanguard of the anti-colonial, and to say nothing of the fact that Iran is funding and has these kind of puppet organizations and all sorts of other states. But of course, that's not true imperialism, because insert
They're
reason or
tyranny,
technicality or formality.
Right. Listen, as long as you're fighting the bad guys, you can do whatever you want. Okay, the rules don't apply.
That's the saddest part, is like, this didn't happen because of the plight of the Palestinians. This is just Hamas on Iran's orders trying to break up this normalization of relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia. But these guys are convinced it's because the Palestinians are being mistreated. Well, that's just used as fuel to keep this conflict going so that Hamas can do what they got to do.
And from a truly democratic regime like Iran, that's a country that actually does respect the views and preferences of their people. Iran,
I have the democracy thing up,
which doesn't ever arbitrarily detain people. Right. Iran, which never imposes anything on people like Israel does. I mean, it's just absurd to pretend that you care about civil liberties or you care about democracy and use them against itself, right? You're using the notion that these Arab states aren't truly democratic against the incentive structures of the Arab states and normalization, but you're not using the clear and obvious fact that Iran is not democratic against the incentive structure of Iran supporting Hamas.
Iran is almost twice as authoritarian, according to the index, 1.96. It's an index of 1 to 10 for
the Western index.
Yeah,
more so than Palestine.
Yeah. Palestine is almost 4.
Right. I mean, I don't know if any of these guys are in favor of like democracy, so that might not even move them. I don't know what Hakim's thoughts are on Iran.
Well, it's cynical, right? Because that's one measure to discount the Arab states. They're discounting the decision made by these Muslim countries to recognize Israel because it's not the true will of the people, as though that's what matters to them.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
You don't know the will of the people, obviously. They don't have a democracy.
Yeah, does Hamas
agree?
Is that a true representative of the?
I doubt it.
The Palestinian people.
I totally
I don't think so. No, I don't think so at all.
But
they're using
They
these
rule
people.
out with fear. It's not like they're celebrated in the streets with flowers and candy and stuff. Like
Right.
they rule with fear.
I
And the
don't-
proof is in the pudding. If there was a deal that Palestinians were willing to take with Israel to come to an agreement, do you think they'd be in favor of that deal? If
No.
there was an
No.
actual genuine desire from, let's say 55% of the Palestinian people, and they actually come to terms, and there's some 40% that's like, mad about it, do you think they would be side with the 55 or the 40? Be side with the 40. They don't really care about
course.
process.
Most people don't. They just want what they want.
They don't care about process.
Regarding Iran,
Normal people
okay.
want peace, though.
No,
Normal
that's
people
true.
want peace.
But
Most people want peace. Yeah.
Yeah, but regarding Iran, I don't, and we may never find out the answer to this question. I don't know if Iran, I'd be kind of skeptical if Iran was like, yes, we want you to go invade Israel and like kill a bunch of people and just do this, as opposed to them kind of funding general terrorism and then Hamas kind of made the decision. Because I feel like
there's
the
been some
blowback on this
reports.
is going to be,
Yeah.
I know there's been some reports.
There's
I just feel like the
it's not been
blowback on
confirmed by the
this,
State Department.
yeah, but I feel like the blowback on this is going to be so strong that, unless Iranians could all just be retarded or something, but just it doesn't seem to be a wise move from my estimation for the Iranian government to be doing.
I think
this.
they've denied it. I think they've denied it.
They've denied it. Yes.
No.
Right.
Firefox
But they support it.
42 says, from
And
the
they-
river to
and
the
they've-
sea.
Hey.
Aenta says,
So someone said from the river to the sea. He cheered it on. That means that they don't want any Israel whatsoever. They want all of it to be Palestine. So
that we have his permission to funnel super chat money into which groups. Yeah, I'm not confused. Thank you, but yeah. Did you all hear?
there you go. Permission to funnel money to Hamas. So there you go.
Cornel
Wild.
West and Bernie condemned Palestine. Yeah, are you surprised, Social Democrats? Are you surprised?
Canceled.
As long as they're dying, it's okay, right?
Yeah.
But the second they do anything, then all of a sudden,
So they're chastising Cornel West and Bernie Sanders for saying that they don't agree with Hamas killing a bunch of innocent people.
They have no heroes. Like even Bernie's not woke enough. That's where you're crazy, when you're like calling Bernie out and AOC and these people like you guys are monsters. Like
Mhm.
that's when
they're
they've lost
social
the plot.
Democrats and they want revolutionaries. So that's the problem.
But like if Bernie is so far to the left that if you can't even find yourself supporting his positions, then you're on an island on your own and wasting time.
Yeah, but that's
Bernie
yeah,
can't even
exactly.
get anything done. Bernie's
But the-
useless.
Right, but it's because you're so far away from them. Like from them,
But
they're
that's
looking at
just-
Bernie to the right, and they're like,
They
Bernie's
hate
to our
Bernie.
right.
No,
Yeah.
they hate Bernie. They hate the squad. They despise the squad. They
sellouts.
think they're institutionalist
They're
sellouts. Yeah.
betrayers. Yeah.
That's like for me. It's I'm not going to keep hitting the point, but yeah,
Right.
they're so irrelevant. They're just so useless that it doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't bother me. I hate to say that, but like, I look. You said you're Jewish, right, Sitch?
Yeah. Yes.
So you hear this shit all the time. People say this about Jews and that, and I understand anti-Semitism is on the rise. But if you respond to every single one of these jerks and like get bothered by them, and it's like it's endless grief for you. Maybe I'm just a skater dude from LA, and I just blow it off. But I'm like, these people are miserable, and fuck them. I'm not going to spend a minute of my life worrying about what they're saying. But maybe I'm great. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm allowing it to grow because I'm not.
Except the hour
attacking
we're spending on it right now.
Right.
well, it's fine. I'm glad we're doing this because I've
Yeah.
avoided the subject on my stream for this very reason.
It's one of those things where like what bothers me is two things. It bothers me, when these people are very popular. That bothers me. Number one, obviously, because you don't want. I don't want to see people running around saying gas to Jews. I'm Jewish. I don't want to be gassed. I don't want to see people talking about killing anyone of any ethnicity or religion. I'm, very in favor of colorblind liberalism, and I think this stuff is all despicable. But number two, kind of thing that also really bothers me about this is that and this came up a lot with Nick Fuentes at first, it's not really, especially after Kanye, it's all kind of gone away because he used to do it. And Destiny got in trouble for doing this. He used to do this thing where he would kind of like, you weren't really sure whether he was anti-Semitic. You weren't really sure whether he's a white nationalist. And that's kind of what bothers me more is when people hide their power level of like what exactly is going on. And for so long, I feel like Second Thought was doing this. He was hiding his power level. And like, this is really just showing it all off, showing what's actually going on underneath the hood.
Following the logic of their, like, if you're taking them at face value, I don't think there's anything necessarily in its nature anti-Semitic if you just bring it back to the bare bones of being, you could be in favor of the terrorism that we saw in Israel and not be anti-Semitic. I don't think that that's logically impossible. So just to be clear, I don't think that it's always the case that because you're in favor of terrorism against Jewish people in Israel, you're anti-Semitic. However, I do think it raises the chances of me coming to that conclusion.
Right.
Yeah, fair enough.
Retro
I
said,
appreciate you explaining that.
Yeah.
what do you all think about Texas GOP wanting to build a border wall with not only Old Mexico but New Mexico as well, also from the river to the sea? Wait, that's a joke.
That's a joke.
That's a joke.
Yeah, that's,
Okay.
that's pretty funny.
All right. Yeah. You know what? At this point, with Republican proposals, I wouldn't be surprised.
But look, here's the thing, though. I don't know if you guys heard. The Biden admin has accelerated the construction of the border wall, and they have waived the protection. They've waived 26 laws for the protection of endangered species, of safe water, indigenous grave sites, to basically just bulldoze and get this thing up as quick as possible. So, like, lesser evil arguments fall a little flat these days.
Yeah, Pisco. God, how can you vote for Biden, you guys?
Yeah, no,
Lesser
I mean,
evil?
like,
come on.
Listen, on the specific wall question, I've already explained that. I think that it's the money's appropriated, and it's kind of weird for me to sit here and criticize Trump for his appropriation of border funds outside of the normal order of Congress, and then sort of be okay with Biden flouting the appropriation in the context of the wall. That said, it's inconsistent with Biden's promise that that no additional piece of wall will be built under his administration. And I just think it was silly to commit to that, because I think that there's absolutely places for border wall and barriers. I think that's no one should have ever taken the position, if they ever did, that walls are never necessary, or that some walls are sometimes, like, whatever that position is, that you can never have a wall, I think is silly.
What is this? Cope hour? Jeez, I can't believe you just.
But also, just to clarify, there's a night and day difference between the kind of immigration enforcement that we saw under the Trump administration or some of the policies in Biden. That difference is narrowing, and it's narrowing significantly during the rise of this particular spike. But there are some major differences between their enforcement strategies and the policies in place. And I agree with a lot of those changes. But again, there's been a great deal of narrowing, but I still think there's a significant difference between the kind of immigration enforcement you see under Biden versus Trump.
Okay. Listen, if anyone out there is Republican, if you care about immigration, don't worry. No matter who you vote for, his policies are going to be exactly the same. Okay. And that's why IRI is voting for Donald Trump for the next election.
True. I look, the wall is temporary. It's going to be built on like Jersey barriers or something like that. Biden says he has to do it because of appropriations. Okay, it is what it is. But taking away this talking point from the right with this huge surge of people that are coming to the southern border right now is not the worst idea. I almost want Biden to come to some sort of agreement with the Republicans on how to deal with the southern border, to take that talking point away from them, because we are getting clobbered with that right now. And in all fairness, there is a surge of humanity at the southern border, and nobody could really handle it. I don't think Republicans are doing great by shipping people around the country in buses and not telling them they're coming. But there's something needs to happen, and ideally it would be the revision of our immigration laws that are dated and incapable of handling this. But he's going to have to do something temporarily. We can't expect these border communities to just be overwhelmed. And if a wall is what they want, then the president has to respond, and things change. So
what you're saying is you want open borders. That's what I heard.
No, I don't. I believe in our borders.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You'll be winning.
Liberals will find a way.
Yep.
Right.
Look at
Cocaine Communist says, "Boss makes $1, I make a dime." That's why I watch the program live on Company Time.
Yes.
Enjoy. Please please try to increase your third quarterly shitting stats on Company Time too.
I will put that on a T-shirt. Remember his name. He needs to get some royalties.
Hamad Zaman sent $5. Thank you very much. He says, "Did the Palestinians actually take civilian hostage, or is that fake news?" I don't care.
Yeah, the occupiers
I don't-
are
I ju-
not civilians. That is what it comes
Yeah.
down to. Like if imagine
French- yeah.
like if
Sorry, go on.
Germany, let's say Germany to be non-controversial, invaded the United States, and they said, you know what, Cincinnati, Ohio is our ancestral home, and everyone knows that's blatantly false, but they take your home, they murder your grandma, they bulldoze like your neighbor's house. Are those people civilians there? No, they're occupiers, and those are criminals. Yeah. There are no civilians there in the illegal military occupation.
Yeah.
So there you go,
Oh,
guys. Listen,
Eddie.
there's no civilians in all of Israel. It's all free game to do whatever horrific crap ever. That is
Even babies.
second thoughts. Even babies. That
Even
is second
babies.
thoughts position. Totally disgusting. Totally insane. Why would anyone ever listen to this dipshit on literally anything after this is beyond me. But
So, and I just want to stress that babies, the mentally ill, the think of whatever
Women,
whatever group
children.
of people that you can think of that
Right.
that have no choice in the matter about whether or not they were born in Israel. You could be the most pro-Palestinian Israeli, and your murder was justified, even though you didn't choose the circumstances of your birth, and you might have even supported the Palestinian cause for all your life. There's no connection between the actions or particular status of the individual being killed or taken hostage and this justification or even any sort of thing that you could have been doing. And once you're on that path based on quote ancestral or historical ties to a place, there is no limiting principle that this should exclude Native Americans in the United States.
of course.
When was
Yeah.
native title extinguished, and was it properly done? Who are you to determine what is proper title or who has a better claim to land or not? We just had a Supreme Court decision a few terms ago, I think, that concluded that there's huge parts of Oklahoma, I believe, that actually is native land according to certain titles. Does that mean that throughout that whole period of time that any inconsistent usage was sort of, you can resist it with murder and slaughter? No, of course not. These issues and resolving them need to be channeled through moral processes, and that comes with advocating your case to the international community and in the sense of international politics, and maybe even some I'm not going to say it's never justified to take extra legal action at all times. I can think of situations in which illegal things may be justified, but in this particular circumstance and the scale that you're talking about and the total lack of connection to any culpable conduct on the part of the victims, there's no justification for these statements, no limiting principle. It includes babies, it includes the elderly, it includes the sick, the dying, and people who support the cause. And for that reason, it's, as well as stupid, unethical.
I want to ask Adam and Sitch, like, for me, my first idea is to think about who are the people listening to this and why, and how do we reach those people? And that was just kind of curious, like what you guys think the best strategy is to go after this, because you could condemn these guys from your platform, and I think it does have an impact because it spreads and you guys have people watching, and but how do we really look at, I'm curious if you think there's a way to identify who these people are watching this in their audience and how we reach those people.
I mean, that's the $1 million question. I don't think anything I say can change the people watching this and reading this on is going to change their mind.
Yeah, don't you think they'll just roll their eyes if they hear this criticism?
Oh, of course. Yeah, they don't care. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know if they all need a Daryl Davis in their life who's white and Jewish to sort of be like, listen, well, all the white Jews were not all evil colonial settler, bastards, and, have some relationship with some Israeli person or something. I don't know the answer to that question. Nothing that we do is going to change that, except, I think the broader systemic question is to make it so that this is just not a acceptable or cool view on the left, to just kind of, make like, this is cringe, this is dumb. Everyone on the left, even in BreadTube, calls this out as being despicable, reprehensible, and I think that will help it not grow. I don't know if that will save anyone from the movement, but it will definitely help it not grow.
And just I don't know. I'm confident that these ideas also, if you get down to the substance too, they don't work in debate, because at some point you need to make a principled distinction between these cases. And
Right.
Is anyone who is in that room or was on that call, if I said to you, would it be justified for the Uyghur Muslims to slaughter random families of Han Chinese people just because of the to protest, or the oppressed shall never have to stomach oppression because of that. And at some point they're going to say, well, no, it's different because arbitrary detention is not enough. Total extinguishing of land rights, that's enough. Okay, so then it's justified for Ukrainians to go into Russia and slaughter any Russian family that's there as a way of fighting against the oppression or encroachment of Russian soldiers on their land? No, of course not. And they would be the first ones to condemn, I would think, any Ukrainian activity that was targeted towards civilians or slaughtering Russian babies. And really, there is no substance there. If you actually wanted to have that debate and find the principal distinctions between the test cases and the one they're presenting,
well, I could tell you their
find
excuses. Their excuses would be the Uyghur stuff is fake news. You're dumb for believing it. Everyone loves
that they're being even arbitrarily detained. They would deny
that's all fake.
Arbitrary detention.
But listen, they're re-education. They're teaching them how to code. They're re-education camps. Okay,
We've
everything's
heard
fine.
this in videos.
Everything's totally fine.
Wait, so they deny that there's even arbitrary detention.
Yeah,
this is my guess. No, to be clear, this would be my guess. But for the Ukraine thing, my guess would be that they'd say, well, it's different because I know that Second Thought, he gave a speech at some DSA conference. And all he did was essentially say everything that's going on in Ukraine is all America's fault. So he would probably give some insane take about how, well, it would be unjust for Ukraine to go and start killing and raping Russians because it's not their fault that they invaded Ukraine anyway. It's really America's fault.
Okay. So if America provokes the inciting incident, therefore anything, all of a sudden rules apply to the. What is even in the principle there, right?
I don't know. Listen, you should reach out to him and try to have a debate with him.
I think I know what the principle is. The principle is anything is allowed against people who are aligned with America.
Right.
And
America bad.
Anything is justified with people who are opposed to America. That seems like what the principle is. And it predicts every test case. It's 100% predictive. If you give the Uyghur case, the Ukraine case, any kind of these examples, I think it's more predictive than any kind of principle.
Right. I mean, that's why I always say the America bad lens
we
is the
call
first
America
lens
bad.
at which all these people kind of are operating through. But I mean, it'd be funny. You should try to reach out to him. I mean, I'm blocked on Twitter by him. But you should try to reach out to him, maybe schedule a debate. I don't know if he's ever done a debate. But
sure. I think it would be easy. I think it would be really easy because ultimately you have to just answer simple questions like, do you support,
these guys, they stay in their hug boxes and they don't want to hear anything. But these are all like supply side arguments, which I don't discount at all. But I just wonder if there's some demand side arguments where, for example, I think kids are drawn to socialism because their lives kind of suck. Like since 2000, they got student debt, credit cards. They've lived through 9/11 and the pandemic. It's like they're kind of pissed off, and so they hear somebody say, "I got a magic button to push and it all change." Viva la revolution. And so they start listening to it, and they start hearing this bullshit and they start hating on Israel.
Right.
So I wonder if there's a way to like deal with the demand, the kids that are listening to this. Cause I imagine most of the audience is like 15-year-old dipshits that are just, edgy and.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, the demand would be, try to change the conditions of people's lives to be better, have stronger labor, stronger job market. I'm sure most of these people, I hate to say it, I'm sure a lot of these people are people that don't have good personal relationships, in their lives, that they, in families and things of that nature. I mean, there's a lot of very large systemic issues that creates the environment that allows, this kind of rhetoric to essentially take hold.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I agree that all that stuff, obviously, we should always be working on that stuff.
And that's why I'm a liberal, because I want to see some change and I want to see some improvement, even if it's incremental. That's why I don't go further left, because I'm like, let's just do something to help these young people improve their lives.
You're a lib cuck.
True.
You're never gonna go far.
One last thing before we press play. I just want to make clear, know these tactics when you see them. The shell game of definition formality stuff, where it only matters when they say it matters. It's there for imperialism. It's there for racism. It's there for certainly of civilian in this context. Imperialism doesn't count when Russia does it. or oppressor doesn't count Russia to be on some technical formality that is not in anyone's, I think, reasonable definitions of these terms. It's just be aware of that, and the kind of shell game that's being played with civilian here versus settler, whether that makes sense to you.
Well, no,
it's true of a lot of tankies.
Right. But that's to me, that's one of the central dangers of socialism versus liberalism. It's because liberalism is operating under a philosophical idea of like, there's objective reality, there's equal principles and equal laws that are supposed to apply to everyone. We're supposed to be adhering, at least in theory, to some sort of like colorblind, race blind, ideological blind approach and say, okay, you all have these natural rights, blah, 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 blah. And we have to have this universal principle. Under communism and socialism, they say that's all dumb and wrong. All that matters is power. So the truth is relative. And so that's, I think, kind of what leads them down this easy pathway to do the shell game we were talking about, because that's not even a principle they even care about.
Well, but it's the same thing with free speech, like appealing to free speech, appealing to democracy, appealing to civil liberties. Like these are the first people who are complaining about free speech when it comes to the Twitter files. They'll never complain about censorship in Russia or People's Republic of China or Iran,
America
or any
bad.
other nations.
Yeah,
but they'll utilize those principles, almost like a virus against people. Go ahead, Ira.
Yeah. Oh, what's interesting is these kibbutzes that were attacked and people were killed. A lot of these are collective living with socialism. I mean, I saw it when I was a little kid on kibbutzes, and like the kids sleep together and everybody shares cars and stuff. And so you think that they would actually kind of praise some of this lifestyle at the very least, but no, they're all
those hippies have second homes. Is that
in Cincinnati? Yeah. Well,
no, a lot of these people this is their home and this is their community.
Yeah,
it's like a group of 700 and they all work together, and it's like the socialism values that these people supposedly want to see in the world, and they were butchered.
Someone brings, I don't know if I included it in this montage, but someone brings it up in the stream, and they just dismiss it as like, well, it's like fake communism on the kibbutzes. It's not real.
Really?
Wow. I just kind of like throw it away. But it sounds like Pico's advocating for the Marcusean repressive tolerance. We got to get rid of all the commies.
No, that's not. I think that I don't even necessarily agree with these people being like banned from places. I don't know. I'm pretty far on I think that like these platforms have a right to ban these people because I think that's part of their free speech interest. But I just my tendency is never towards censorship.
Right.
I'll choose not to associate with people who are consistently and actively and strenuously like advocating for things that I find abhorrent, for sure. At least not in a collaborative. I might debate them, but I'm not going to collaborate in the kind of friendly fashion. But I don't even necessarily agree that they should be censored on the platforms because I think it's useful to identify them and to show them for what they are.
I don't think any of these people should be banned on YouTube or Twitter. I do think Patreon is hypocritical if they keep them on, but that's a different story. So,
oh yeah, in terms of consistency, this is just as bad as like any of the anti-BLM. In my opinion, if I'm going to be honest with you, the election denial stuff, maybe even some of the COVID stuff, maybe I put in a category of its own. But in terms of the inflammatory political opinion or offensive opinion category of stuff that was censored, I don't know how you're not censoring it if that's your position. But I think a lot of these platforms have relaxed on those standards, and I don't necessarily disagree with those relaxations.
So that's number one, very beautifully put. Number two, much more importantly, the track record of Palestinians has been 1,000 times better than that of the Israeli occupation, despite the fact that Israeli occupation does not need to brutalize. They already have all the power, but they still choose to do far, 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 far worse. The worst that will happen to a person in Palestinian custody is that they're going to be like auctioned off for a prisoner swap, which is the historic track record also. That's if they're a civilian. If they're in military of any kind, then you know what, things happen in war, and if you are insulted by the act of liberation of an oppressed group, then your morality is kind of null. It doesn't matter. If you're in the same shoes and same condition, you'd arguably probably want to do even worse. So the restraint is admirable. Some prisoner swaps and a lot of dead Palestinians because
Can we pause real quick? So just to understand the argument, the moral argument here is if you are in X category, everything is null. So
Yeah.
what's the limit? Would you be
Oppressed.
okay with torture? Is it
Yes.
okay to cut off people's private parts?
Yep.
Would that be okay because of the category of is there any limit here? What
No.
is the limit if
There's
any
none.
exists?
He said there's none. He's very clear. There's no limit.
Yes.
I think he would stand by that if you asked him. That and it's really weird. I mean, this whole interaction is bizarre because he created a distinction between military and civilian, literally after praising Second Thought for saying that there was no civilian in Israel. So I don't even know what the fuck he's
I noticed
talking
that
about.
too. Yeah, since you're sharp. I
Because
noticed
it's
that
like,
too.
well, I was like, well, you just said that was beautifully said when he said there are no civilians, and then you're saying, well, first of all, it's delusional. This guy's fucking delusional, and I don't know, maybe if he's whatever country he's living in, they just drip feed him this like propaganda. If he thinks that you getting captured by Hamas means that you're going to be treated well and you're just going to get prisoner swapped.
Well, you'll just be auctioned off, you know. And,
Yeah,
and
like-
remember, before they were crying about arbitrary detention and lack
Yeah.
of due process and cry me a river. Like, you give a shit about that.
Right. But just, I mean, just have fucking, these people are so detached from reality. They like, honestly fucking believe Hamas kidnaps you. And if you're not in the military, you know, oh, you'll be fine. They'll just auction you off for a prisoner. You'll be totally taken care of. Like, that's just, these people are so fucking stupid.
And how they would explain that slip up is, it was just a slip up. But Israeli civilians are still settlers. And even though there's a distinction between soldier and non-soldier,
guess.
that's just a matter of grace that the Hamas is charitable enough to sometimes honor that distinction. But they
Yeah,
are
what-
no
yeah,
more
what does that even
obligation
fucking
to
mean?
respect it.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, like that's essentially where they're at. Like, there would be no reason, justified reason, or required reason to distinguish between civilians and soldiers. It's just a matter of grace that Hamas happens to distinguish them.
Right.
But it's not based on any morality. It's just
No.
privilege that Hamas is offering.
It
Yeah, 'cause
is
they're so
based in
nice.
the morality, the oppressor-oppressed morality.
Right.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of these people, they look at people who are oppressed and they assume that they have some morality to them just because they're oppressed. Like, just being oppressed makes you a more moral person, which is usually not the case.
And I don't disagree that Palestinians are oppressed. There is widespread denial of what I would consider to be basic human rights in a lot of different capacities for Palestinians, both in West Bank and in Gaza Strip. Property rights are rights, and they should be respected. And when people get forced out of their homes and that it's bulldozed, that is not respecting rights that they're entitled to. And that I don't know if someone took over your house and bulldozed it and reconstructed a house, I don't know what word better describes it than oppression. If someone is shooting you on an insufficient basis, on the basis of your race or religion, I would call that oppression. I don't deny the moniker of oppression or the fact that Palestinians are in general oppressed. It's just the reaction to it. What is actually helpful for Palestinians, and is there any limit to what you would prescribe?
Well, yeah, but just to add on that, because you're oppressed, there's two things. If you're oppressed, number one, it doesn't make you more moral as a person. And if you're oppressed, it doesn't justify you to do whatever the fuck you want just because you're oppressed.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the
these guys-
worldview that they operate from. But
I don't mean to downplay what these guys are saying, but these guys just seem mentally unwell to me when I hear people making arguments that like any violence is justified. I just think this is no different than the guy standing in front of Subway naked pouring a 2-liter of Dr. Pepper on his head. Like, these are just sick people who are mentally unwell, and it's like a cry for help, like a screaming for help. So it's hard for me to like take them seriously and like okay, let me pick apart their argument. But I'm hearing what you guys are saying, and I'm hanging in. I'm curious.
But the reason why they have to say that anything is justified, because the minute they put some limit, right? Let's say they put some limit and say, okay, you're not allowed to cut off someone's arm.
Then they have to change their position as soon as
Then
they
have
do
to
that.
they have to condemn cutting babies' heads off.
right.
Then they have to. So any limit that you are going to impose on the amount or scale of violence that's justified against Israelis will absolutely include some non-insignificant amount of the conduct that occurred. And so that's why there cannot be a limiting principle.
But isn't that like a mental, like that seems like a mental misfire at the very least, if not something broke in their head that they can't connect the dots, I guess. Like, what's going on there?
I don't think
it's a property of the morality, though. It's not like, I don't know how you can call it a mental illness when it's literally a property of the moral system. They're basically saying anyone who is oppressed can do anything to lash out against their oppressor. That's the moral system.
Okay, that seems like a much bigger topic. I have to think about that because I feel like everybody is fixable. And I don't feel like I think
you can't fix that.
I believe you could.
It's even worse here because people are making these tacit claims to oppression so that they can do that.
Well, but so are you saying that these people are just broken and there's no like mental health care out there in the world or pills that could fix this sort of reasoning?
I think anyone can change. I think anyone can be, quote, fixed, and how we're kind of defining it. I don't think either of these three people, like I might call them crazy and psychopathic, I don't think they're actually crazy or mentally unwell or mentally unhinged, I should say. I think they have constructed a worldview and a moral system that justifies this despicable thing that they're talking about, but that's it. That's what's going on there. They're not they're not psychopaths. Giving them pills isn't going to change any of their opinions on any of this stuff.
Well, what if they met some hot chick from Israel or something? Do you think it would?
That could change. Yeah, that could definitely change
might
people
work.
real quick. Yeah.
Maybe. Okay, so there you go.
Right, but I'm just saying I don't think they're like literally crazy. I don't think people are literally.
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah. I feel like Dad didn't say he loves you enough or something, and they went down this weird path. I don't know.
Well, you have a moral system. Like we all have a moral system, but you seem to be willing to say that there's some limitations. Like you can't just claim that you're oppressed and the gloves come off. You're literally able to do anything to whoever you perceive as an oppressor. Because that's literally what's going on here.
I think you just create more problems for yourself if you go down the line of violence. So it just doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
No, I want to be clear.
But I think I'm lucky for having this belief. I don't think that I played a real big role in it. You know what I'm saying? I think I got lucky with my parents and my community and my education. I wonder about some other people who had a rougher life. I wouldn't be surprised if some of these guys in this podcast were like beat the shit out of them.
No, I think this guy grew up wealthy. Like he has another chance.
I don't know what the other.
Well, you could be wealthy and still like
Well, the other guy's a doctor.
Mistreated.
I mean,
well, the other guy.
I'm not trying to make excuses for these guys. I'm just saying, like.
Right. Well, no, like I understand exactly what you're saying because I have like the same intuition in terms of like, oh, I got lucky to believe what I believe because it has to do with my environment and my family and all this other stuff. That's all true. But kind of the hard realization that I think I kind of started to come to as I got older is while that's true, sort of the dark element of reality is that there are people who will become evil through no fault of their own. And there's nothing you can do about it. And there's nothing you can do if you're in conflict with them except to, defeat them with violence at some point.
Yeah, if a psychopath targets you, you don't have a lot of options.
Sure. Yeah, I don't think these guys are that far down the hole, though.
Yeah, no, to be clear, I'm not talking about them. I'm just saying in general, like people, people who like the Hamas people, like the people that are doing this shit. Like, I don't think they're all just like, crazy in terms of being detached from reality. I think they've had a bunch of things happen to them that's put them down this pathway that's made them justify these horrendous actions. So I understand why they got there, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to take out one of these Hamas guys, when they're coming at me.
That's a key point, Sitch, that like none of us are denying that oppression can play into the causal pathway of why someone might do these horrific acts. And we can understand why people may be brought to those parts of their life, especially, imagine that you're someone from Gaza and all your life, not only have you had that kind of ideological indoctrination, but you have faced horrible conditions. You have seen your friends who've protested been killed unjustifiably. You know that there's a blockade. You know that, your father, your mother died of sickness and illness because you're not getting the kind of resources that should be available to you. I can understand how radicalization, even horrible radicalization, can occur under those circumstances. I think you'd be kind of a unfeeling monster not to understand that. It's just we can't justify it. That's the only thing.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Well said. That's exactly what I think. I'm constantly looking at the source of the problem. That's all, instead of just the problem.
That's your liberal intuition.
It creeps into our everyday life, though, when we're interacting with people who are looking at us like we are colonizers of America, like we are the ones that are responsible for killing off the Native Americans, that we are somehow oppressors in the system that we live in right now. Because if you have this moral system that anything is justified if somebody is labeled an oppressor, that's a problem.
And it's a problem. The connection you just made is so critical. I want everyone to hear this, because Israel, under their theory, is an oppressor.
Yes.
America gives material and knowing support to Israel for them to conduct the apartheid regime, so-called, which I might even agree with some labels of that, but suppose that you agree with that. America is, a lot of people say, vital to Israelis' position and the maintenance of that system. And therefore, they are collaborators in the Israeli occupation of Palestine. They're key partners in the oppression of the Palestinian people. And if they're key partners in this oppression, they are also oppressors. And if America is also an oppressor of the Palestinian people, then it must follow that anything that's justified as against Israelis is justified as against Americans.
Yes, all of us. Exactly.
Only if they're white, though.
It must follow, right? I mean, how can you say America, and the government of America probably gives, I don't even know. I think Israel must be one of the biggest recipients of foreign aid in the United States, at least historically.
This is bad, right, Pisco? This is terrible.
Horrible, yeah, horrible.
Look,
I mean, why wouldn't it be justified to kill Americans on this basis? I mean, it must be justified, and therefore, any terrorist attack on American tacit supporters of the American regime must be justified.
So, what did Hassan Piker say?
People should abandon this moral framework, right, Pisco? This moral framework
100%. Because how do you distinguish treatment of Israelis versus treatment of Americans if you're not considering the culpability of individuals or people, the specific intentions of Israelis? American governments and they are, I guess, in some sense, tacitly supporting their government by voting. The Republican and Democrats, they're all trying to outflank each other as being more pro-Israel than the other. So every viable political candidate in this system is extremely pro-Israel, and Americans reliably vote for that all the time. How could you not extend the culpability for which violent terrorism is justified to Americans as well as Israelis? And therefore, what you're saying, I think logically, is that Americans are also proper targets of proper military actions, namely the indiscriminate slaughter.
Yeah, but I think what you're saying is completely correct, and I think that's why a lot of these people don't have a lot of sympathy for shoplifting. They don't have a lot of sympathy for when people get their businesses destroyed in some kind of riot. They don't really seem to give a shit about it. I think this is why Hassan said America deserved 9/11, and I know, like, I kind of listened to some of his coverage on this, and he obviously didn't give a take this extreme, but because he said America deserves 9/11, it makes me wonder if this is actually what he believes. If he actually does agree with all this, he just is smart enough to not say it because he knows the backlash will be.
I mean, it follows logically. If what Israelis are doing, one of the bases of Al-Qaeda's attack on 9/11, one is it's just mere presence
support of Israel
in Holy Land, but another one is support of Israel and the oppression of the Palestinians, and that's known. And so, if this kind of violence is justified against Israelis, it must be justified as against Americans, unless you're saying, I don't know what, Americans who have less connection to the land but give huge amounts of support to Israel are less legitimate targets.
I just think it's like a detachment from reality, right? Like, it's easy to say America, like, Israelis should go away if you have no connection to them at all or whatever. So it seems like a lack of empathy, and it's just a distancing oneself. But that's, Adam, you're saying this is a moral framework, and I'm curious, like, how do people get this one versus yours? And it's like, I for me personally, I won't keep belaboring this point, but it's like economic conditions, never held a girl's hand in their life. You know, these kind of things take people down this path.
Second thought is married with a child, by the way.
Well, he's just taking advantage of these shitlords. Okay. You know what I mean?
I think he believes.
Same thing with Hassan. Hassan too. Right. Like he's like, fight for the workers, not me. I'm not the 1%, the top 1%. You know.
So do you think? Look, maybe you didn't know when Hassan said America deserved 9/11 that he meant.
I knew that.
Maybe. Okay, so you did know that he meant it. Okay.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if he meant it or not. But if what you're saying is America deserved 9/11. How I hear that is it was justified to attack
That's what he's
America
saying.
for 9/11. And
that's
therefore it's justified to kill people who have no necessary connection. A lot of them weren't even American citizens who died on that day. That it would have been therefore just as justified to walk into the firefighter station, the New York firefighter station, and just slit the throats of all the people there. I mean, there's no difference between that and causing their death via fire.
That would be a good question for Hassan. It would be.
Well, you must I mean, I don't know what is the distinction, because one is more, the plane is different. That's the whole reason why they say Israel is just as culpable as Hamas, is because they're just doing it at a distance. They're not up close and personal. Up close and personal is how Hamas is the only distinguishing factor between what Hamas does and what Israel does. But if that's true, then there's no distinction between 9/11 and just going up to every individual who died that day and shooting them in the head or cutting their throat.
Sitch, we got to wrap this up. Mahler wants to come on after we're done with this. So.
Oh, okay, sure.
But look, you guys should come back on again, and we should have a conversation about morality, because
we can finish this video.
Sitch and I love to talk about morality. We have a really interesting way to look at morality that's much different than most people do. So, but let's do it. Look, I'm getting worn out, and Mahler wants to come on. So, but let's just finish up the video.
We all listen. I know Mahler is really desperate to talk about Israel, so I'm curious.
No, he's already said he doesn't want to talk about it.
I know.
I'm seeing a comment in the chat consistently ask if I think that it's okay to hold America responsible. No, not at all responsible for 9/11. No, I do not think America deserves 9/11 or is responsible for 9/11.
Look, it didn't sound like you said that at all. Yeah. It sounded like you were disagreeing with Hassan. So
yeah, I disagree with that position. I think that it's a despicable position.
Well, it's clear for me. I'm glad you cleared it up for the chat.
The cowardly regime cannot actually face men in battle. All they can do is carry out the airstrikes on residential civilian buildings, because that's all they can get away with. I don't think I've ever seen a single image of a Israeli soldier meeting Hezbollah or Hamas or any other group where they haven't all pissed themselves collectively. It's like I'm not kidding. Genuinely, these people are made to harass old ladies and children and kill people from afar. They're not men. They have absolutely no backbone when it comes to this sort of stuff. And that's what happens with what's it called, colonizing force. These people are coming to steal something that doesn't belong to them.
So we have our classic fascist, weak, strong. The Israelis are so strong, they're oppressing the Palestinians, but they're individually all so weak that whenever they fight against a Hamas person, they all just pee their pants. They're all so scared. They're all terrified.
It's just, I've seen some videos online, and this is my conclusion, it's so stupid, man.
Yeah, I've seen so many videos and pictures of Israeli citizens just so gung-ho to strap on their equipment to protect their country. This is just so classically you're so biased. It's like your brain has been rotted out by this. If this is your take from the situation, but
Israel's a formidable force. They've done hostage rescue, incredible stories of hostage rescue in other countries. They'll go to the ends of earth to rescue their people. And their special forces are really strong.
We should be doing that as Americans. There's 9 Americans that are still being held hostage over there.
I don't think we're involved. Possible, but
we're involved with intelligence. It sounds like we're helping coordinate some things, but it's an area of 2 million people, so it's going to be hard to find someone.
Mina Cat says, can people stop saying that music festival by Gaza was a peace festival? Yeah, for those unaware, there's a video or a photo and a companion video of a woman along with a bunch of other people who got caught up in the beginning of this operation. And
Operation.
the Western press ran with it. She's like, "Oh, she's been killed. This has happened. This has happened. She was attending a peace music festival at 6 in the morning." I'm just telling you, it's
Outside
a very
a
regular
concentration
occurrence.
camp,
Yeah, a very regular occurrence for somebody to be like, blasting Dua Lipa at 5 a.m. or whatever the fuck. Outside of the biggest the biggest open air prison camp in the fucking world. No, and by the way, she used to be an IDF soldier herself. She's another member of the occupation, and she's fine. By the way, because of all the big bullshit that's been happening, for some reason nobody's posted the updates that were companion videos to the original one, which was essentially her sitting on a couch drinking some water, vibing.
Yeah.
And it's so clear she's gonna be used for a prisoner swap, like all these other people. But you know how it is.
Wow.
The media all of a sudden remembered it's humanitarian.
Okay, so we have a lot of claims here. We have
Jesus.
it wasn't the music festival wasn't really, I guess, a music festival, because why would you have a music festival next to a concentration camp, as he said? So that's some kind of fake conspiracy. Number one. Number two, this person was in the IDF, which my understanding is that every Israeli citizen has to serve in the military. So, I mean, that
Yep.
applies to everyone at this point. So I guess
This,
no one
this was
is,
a girl
yeah.
that was in the back of the truck, right?
I don't
No,
know.
I think
if
this is
you're
the one
talking
on the
about-
motorcycle.
Yeah, I
She
don't
was
know
sipping
which-
water on a couch later.
Yeah, so then afterwards,
okay.
there's a picture of her sipping water, vibing, as he says. So therefore, look, she's being treated nice. She definitely isn't going to get brutalized or raped or murdered.
You
or
can tell how
anything.
disingenuous all of this is based on the
Yeah.
following things. Number one, if it's enough that they're there, why are you emphasizing that they were in the IDF? If it's enough that they're citizens or citizen settlers or oppressors, why are you mentioning at all the fact that they're a member of the IDF? That doesn't play into your analysis. If it's enough that they're just present there and they're on stolen land and they have no connection, why are you mentioning that they're playing Dua Lipa next to the biggest open air prison? It doesn't matter whether they were doing that or anywhere inside the territory. What does it matter? I mean, it really doesn't affect the morality of it, whether they were playing Dua Lipa next to it, whether it was a peace rally, whether it wasn't a peace rally. None of that is factored into your analysis. For you to bring it up is totally disingenuous. And then finally, who cares if she's being treated well or not? If she were being treated poorly, you would be justifying it. And if she would be treating, it doesn't matter. It doesn't affect the calculus about whether or not they're in the right or wrong. The notion that she's being treated poorly or well or is fine or is not fine. None of those factors that he just listed at all affect in any way the conclusion about whether or not any particular act in this operation was justified. And so for them to bring it up, they know that intuitively people it doesn't appeal that moral system of oppressor oppressed. There are things wrong with that. And so they are bringing up these factors that are ultimately irrelevant to their conclusion. And it's disingenuous. And I would call it bad faith.
Mm-hmm. Well, as you said, they know that there are people that aren't going to be able to stomach so cleanly their position. So they're arguing. I forget, you said it earlier in the conversation. I remember what it was called. Arguments of.
There are arguments in the alternative, but when I offer
yeah.
arguments in alternative, I believe them all. But you should ask them, would it be justified for them to torture there? Would it be justified to torture?
Right.
And if your answer is no, you'd be like, why? Why would
They're
it be
doing it for the
implicit claim
audience.
already is yes, though.
Yeah.
Right.
So then it doesn't matter whether or not they're in good health or not in good health. If they were being tortured, it wouldn't affect anything.
Her. They kidnapped her. I mean,
to say nothing of the fact that she's not fine. She's kidnapped. Being kidnapped is not fine.
She's being held captive.
Right.
Tendencies when it comes to being anti-Palestine.
I have like a wet dream of if there's ever an invasion of America, I'm just gonna go to like kill people in Ocean City.
Oh my
Like,
god.
the people I worked for. Like I'll just go and murder them and then fly back.
Okay. Imagine beeps. I wonder what Yugopi just said right now. It was all beeped out. There's a little interference. Baby Marxist says.
So there you go. This guy was saying.
Yeah, I don't even need to ask them. We
Wow.
know.
Yeah, he would go to America to kill his former employers. So, the
Edgy.
purge was on. It's great.
It's like a revenge fantasy for them. They're wishing that they were these people.
Yeah,
They're
of
wishing
course.
that they were these Palestinian invaders.
I think that's what's going on so clearly here with a lot of people is that, people have a lot of things that they view in their life that pisses them off, that angers them. They are angry at the world. They blame someone else for their problems. And this, they're kind of projecting their revenge fantasy onto the Hamas people. And that's kind of what's going on.
I think you nailed it.
The next question is, would you shoot that baby in the head? Would you do it? You're saying they're brave. You think this is justified?
Right.
could you bring yourself to do it?
Fuck
No,
no.
this guy would piss his pants as soon as he left the door to go do what he was gonna do, you know?
Well, this guy says I didn't put it here, but he said he's scared of like knives and sharp things for some reason. So yeah, I mean, I don't think he's scared of knives, wouldn't be beheading any babies, but I guess he can cheer him on. So you know.
I'd kill everybody, everyone who wronged me, everyone who called me a name, that girl who said no to prom. Like, these guys are so cringe, man.
Right.
There's so many progressives like Bernie Sanders and Cornel West outing themselves as Zionists by commenting on Palestine. They're not doing that. No,
they're lockdowns.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're more worried about their political careers in the U.S. than being on the side of truth, and they are afraid of tanking their either political careers or basically giving free fodder for the evangelical right in the U.S. to smear them for the next like 2 weeks as a result of it. And that is apparently that's heavier for them than to be on the side of truth, and that's the issue with social democrats. They're never going to be there for you when you need it.
So there you go. We're never going to be there.
Look at that. You guys got final thoughts? We'll wrap it up and let you guys pick off.
Well, I would just say briefly that I think these guys are doing more damage than good in what they think is good. I think a lot of I do. I really do. I think that this kind of rhetoric is falling out of vogue. It's falling out of fashion. I feel like Hassan, people aren't really interested in this sort of crazy rhetoric anymore. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm in my own bubble and I don't see it, but I don't think this stuff is getting bigger. I think people are looking for some solutions. They're looking for they're not looking for the edginess and this sort of rhetoric, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. You guys seem more concerned about it than I am, but I'll keep an eye out. But I've been through so many of these battles. I've seen this so many times that I'd rather just focus on making my voice bigger and drowning out these people.
There's a super chat that's pretty nice for you here. AKPX1212 for $20 says IRI. That's why you make your name so hard. I'm really important. Might be a little further left than I am used to, but he seems like a really cool dude and loves America. Plus, after seeing actual crazy people like Second Thought, he is not that bad. You have a new fan. So
this is how you know
love
that I'm the
America.
most good faith person on the internet. Okay, how many people would get into a heated argument with two people and then say, listen, let's all shit on someone even crazier to make yourselves look way better to the audience, okay?
That's so funny.
Well, look, it's all love, you know. I honestly, I don't have any ill will toward either of you guys. I know things get heated and such, but I have a lot of respect for you guys. Otherwise, I wouldn't be around and I wouldn't interact with you guys. And I think the actions speak louder than the words. And I'm listening, you know. You guys have open eyes. Adam was talking to me privately about like the Trump voting thing, and I'm always open. I'm always listening, and I get things wrong too, you know.
I've first heard of
forgiven.
Sitch and Adam when I debated Lauren Southern one time, and they were fair as hell. They dragged me in. I think I was commenting or piping up in the chat, and they dragged me in right away. And so the one thing I think most appreciate about Sitch and Adam is that I think they do take it in good health, and they're always willing to hear them out and to give us opportunities to look good. So I appreciate that and appreciate the invite.
Hell yeah. Hi, you just listened to a clip from the Sitch and Adams show. If you like what you heard, you can listen to our live show right here on this channel on Sunday, starting at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And if you want, you can super chat us. We read $20 and up super chats on the show and then do a follow-up stream on the following Tuesday where we read the rest of the unread super chats and interact with fans of the show. Subscribe to this channel right here to listen to the live show or to listen to more of our awesome clips.